The overhead in tennis is one of the most powerful shots you can have. It's a great opportunity when you have it. The problem is too many people, when they have that opportunity, they pass it by because they either don't have the confidence to hit the shot, or they don't know it's an overhead and they let it bounce, and then they hit a shot, a forehand or a volley, and they make the match longer, and they keep the ball going when they could have finished the point on an overhead. So in this case, I'm going to teach you first the correct grip. For the overhead, you want to make sure you start with a simple grip. Continental grip is the easiest. If you have an Eastern or a Western grip, you can still get away with the overhead, but the only problem is you're not going to have as much versatility with your wrist and your aim than when you have another grip that's not continental. So we're going to focus on continental grip today. For the continental grip, we're going to hold the racket on the frame. We're going to slide that hand down to the grip. You should have what's called the handshake position, or over here. Handshake position should be where the racket is facing right in front of you and your wrist is not sticking to the side. It should be right behind it. You can shake that racket down like that. For the overhead, I'm going to have you get both feet sideways, facing to the right, and your racket should be facing the court. Key elements on the overhead are the setup with the feet. So you want to make sure you get your feet sideways with the overhead. You always want to make sure you step in with your left leg if the ball is forward, or keeping your weight down so that you can generate power with your legs. Number two, racket up. So feet positioning, racket up for the overhead is number two. The racket up is probably the most important part. If you have your racket up, then the rest is just follow through. So while you're waiting, as soon as you see the ball coming up for an overhead, you get sideways, you start shuffling your feet to get under the ball, because if you don't get under that ball, the ball's either going to go past you or short, and then you miss out on the opportunity of an overhead. So we get under the ball, sideways, we bring the racket up, just like a tennis trophy. Tennis trophy position is the best. Left hand up, right hand behind, and racket up and ready in this manner. So your racket should be up, left hand up. If you add a little bit of knee bend, it helps you absorb a little bit the power on the overhead, so that you're not just using your arm and getting it tired. Second thing, when you make contact with your overhead, make sure that you hit the ball out in front of you. By hitting the ball out in front of you, you get the ball to tilt down into the court. By hitting down into the court, then you keep the ball in more often and not sailing out of the court, which is what happens to a lot of people out there. So we want to make sure you get sideways. Trophy position, when you make contact out in front, after you make contact out in front, you're going to bring your right arm down, but the easiest way to bring your right arm down to your left hip is to first snap your wrist where you want the ball to go. So you're going to aim with the tip of your racket. If you want to aim to the backhand, you would snap your wrist to the tip of the racket to the backhand side. If you want to aim to the forehand, you would snap your wrist to the forehand side with the tip of the racket. Why is this so important? Because the wrist gives you a lot of versatility in an uncomfortable position, very high. You're still able to snap your wrist into the ball and keep the ball into the court. So that's a very important element on your overhead. So you want to make sure, set up, sideways, shuffle with your feet, racket up, position on your trophy position, sideways. You reach with your legs a little bit so that you don't just use your upper body to generate all the power. You reach up, you snap your wrist on your overhead. When you snap your wrist on the overhead, make sure you follow through to your left hip, or else if you just do the wrist snap, sometimes the racket will fall out of your hand and slide out if it's slippery. If you snap and you follow through to your opposite hip, then you'll have a complete overhead motion. The complete overhead motion will allow you to repeat and repeat and repeat without injuring your shoulder, and that's better, that's smarter, that's safe tennis. So in this case, we're going to get in trophy position. We're going to snap the wrist, follow through to your left hip. After you follow through, make sure your head is still up. The number one and most common problem for everybody when they miss an overhead, it's usually because they hit and they bring their head down upon making contact with the ball, so you lose sight of the ball. So what you want to focus on is keeping your head up, making contact, keeping your chin up. You can use the peripheral view on your eyes, just tilting down. You look down with your eyes. You don't need to drop your head down to see the court. You can use your eyes. Just drop your eyes, look down, and then continue down to the court. That'll make you keep your eye on the ball. It'll help you find the center strings more often, less frames, which will also mean more success on the court.